I wanted to welcome everybody. We're very excited to be here, to be launching this program, and we're very grateful for your presence. My name is William Van Geest. I am Executive Director of Ecology Ottawa. As you can see from the slide, um, this is the launch of our climate equity workshop. The program is called Empowering Community-Led Climate Action Through Equitable Participatory Development Interventions in Ottawa. And your hosts this evening are Ecology Ottawa and City for All Women Initiative. Before going any further, we wanted to acknowledge that Ecology Ottawa and Cowie work on the unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, and we acknowledge their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. Um, so my first job this evening, apart from welcoming everyone, is to introduce Ecology Ottawa. So we are a grassroots ecology advocacy organization focused on the city of Ottawa. So most of our work takes place at the municipal level, that is Ottawa City Council. We have a variety of programs in three streams: climate, nature, and people. And we routinely collaborate with a variety of partners across the city, whether community groups, other advocacy organizations, or city officials. And speaking of collaborations, I will pass the floor over to our colleague Cassidy at Cowie to introduce that organization.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you, William. I'm Cassidy. I'm the Civic Engagement Coordinator at City for All Women Initiative, also known as Cowie. Cowie is a nonprofit advocacy organization that works alongside women and gender expansive folks of diverse lived experience to build their knowledge, skills, and momentum to collectively advocate for economic, political, and social justice. Cowie works with decision makers and partner organizations to advance public policies and practices that make Ottawa a more inclusive and caring city. And we do this through our monthly civic engagement tables, policy research and advocacy, and direct action at City Hall. We are a member-driven organization, so our advocacy is built around what our members are seeing, feeling, and hearing in their communities and daily lives. And we're excited to be partnering with Ecology Ottawa on this project.
Thanks very much, Cassidy. So before we launch into things, just a few housekeeping items. So you will likely have noticed that this workshop is being recorded. The idea there being to increase the reach of this content for those unable to attend this evening. Donc, je vais m'adresser aux francophones parmi nous. Donc, on va présenter cet atelier en anglais seulement. Mais on a nos ressources dans les deux langues officielles du Canada. Et donc, vous pouvez vous en profiter. Mais si vous avez des questions en français, n'hésitez pas à les poser, soit au droit ou dans le chat. Et on va faire tout notre possible pour y répondre. And so the chat is also open, and we want to encourage folks to use it over the course of the presentation. Feel free to post questions or comments. We also ask that folks, of course, mute during the presentation, and we will be liberal with our own use of mute. If needed, please don't be offended. Just we try to make it as beneficial place for learning for everyone. We will have a time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have questions that you'd like to pose out loud, there will be an opportunity to do that. And we also wanted to acknowledge our funders who generously are supporting this project financially. That is the Ottawa Climate Action Fund, whose logo you can see at the bottom left of this slide. So to start off, again, we want to encourage folks to use the chat. And particularly at this point, we want you to invite you to share who you are and what brings you to this workshop today. And for those less familiar with the Zoom platform, the chat can be found by giving an Alt H, pops right up, or you can use the button. My goodness, where even is this button? I swear there's a chat button. I use Alt H because it's much easier. Um, yeah, feel free to just answer popcorn style in the chat, so folks can just read through when they have a moment. Thank you, Jen Niffer B. Climate Justice, that's wonderful. Jessa is interested in learning more. Always great. Wait for a couple more to roll in and then move into the next block of the presentation. Oh, Anne works with the Green Municipal Fund at FCM. And this is a popular topic. Great to hear, Anne. Thanks for being here. Wendy's here for the learning opportunity. Fantastic. How is working a climate solutions project and wants to think about equity lenses. Cowie will
So
provide all of his expertise on that.
Huh?
Malvika is here to learn about climate equity and the intersection with urban planning. Joe Gunn would like to see high aspirations. Oh, to see also Ottawa go fossil free. Yeah, fantastic. Hassan is visiting scholar from Carleton University. I think I will leave folks to peruse the rest of the responses. Thank you so much for those who've put responses in there. And now over to you, Camille, our program lead on this project.
Thanks, William, and hi everyone. Yeah, we have a really full agenda ahead. I'm really looking forward to spending this time together. Throughout the workshop, we'll be drawing connections between climate change, equity, planning, development, and you. And so we'll be running through a whole lot of topics, as you can see. So we'll start with the basics of what is climate change. We'll look at climate change in Ottawa, adaptation mitigation, climate equity, equity planning and development, development and emissions, emissions reductions in new development, the development process in Ottawa, and we'll look a bit more closely at our project and activities. And this will lead us into a participatory planning activity. And then we'll end off with kind of a look forward and how you can get involved. And we'll have a question period at the end, as William mentioned. So familiar to most, we're gonna first look at what is climate change. I know it's a review, but worth setting the stage with a common definition here. So climate change refers to changes in average weather conditions, such as temperature and precipitation in a region over a period of time. Our Earth's climate is constantly changing, but the pace of climate change has significantly accelerated, specifically since Industrial Revolution. Climate change is caused by an excess of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which have been released on a greater scale due to economic production derived from burning fossil fuels, so that's coal, oil, gas, cutting down trees, and the destruction of wetlands. It greatly affects everyone, but the impacts are felt unevenly globally and within communities. Socioeconomic injustices are exacerbated by climate change, making some more vulnerable than others. So now to take all this and bring it to an Ottawa setting, so it really hits home. Ottawa, as you know, is experiencing warmer, wetter, more unpredictable weather. As I say that out loud, saying wetter feels wrong as we've been in a pretty prolonged drought. But this is the trend. On average, summers are getting hotter, winters less cold. While average total annual precipitation has increased, it varies greatly both in terms of where and when it falls. Overall, Ottawa's weather is becoming more variable and unpredictable. So we have a whole list of examples of extreme weather events in Ottawa that we've been experiencing in recent years. So that includes over 50 centimeters of snow in February 2016, which caused closures throughout the city and set a new record for biggest snowfall in a single day. We've had significant flooding along the Ottawa River in the spring of 2017 and 2019, which resulted in extensive property damage and health concerns. Tornadoes in 2018 and 2019 caused extensive damage to property and power outages. Ottawa experienced prolonged extreme heat event that lasted 6 days in July 2018, where on Canada with humidex levels, we're reaching feels like 47 degrees Celsius, a level we experienced this year as well. And of course, in our recent consciousness, the Ontario-Quebec derecho in May 2022 killed 10 people, caused widespread property damage, and left hundreds of thousands of people in Ottawa without power for several days. And climate science tells us that these trends will continue over the next decades, and climate projections use climate science and modeling to predict future changes in temperature, precipitation, wind, and extreme weather. We're expected to have shorter winters in Ottawa, hotter summers, earlier springs, wetter falls, winters and spring, later falls, and more extreme weather events. By the 2050s, under a high emission scenario, our region is projected to experience significant changes, more significant changes, with average annual temperature increasing by 3.2 degrees Celsius, 4 times as many very hot days over 30 degrees Celsius, a 35% decrease in days below -10. Spring will start 2 weeks earlier, fall will start 3 weeks later, so winter will be shorter by 5 weeks. Winter freeze-thaw events will increase by 33%. Precipitation will increase in spring, winter, and fall by 8%. The maximum daily precipitation will increase by 14%. Annual snowfall is expected to decrease by 20%, and we may experience an increase in freezing rain events, more storms, tornadoes, and wildfires. So this brings us to the big question of what to do. I know it's a heavy topic to breach, especially as we've experienced such a hot, dry, and smoky summer. The big question of what to do. When we talk about climate action, we generally categorize our response in 2 ways. So mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation works to tackle the root cause of the problem. So that's reducing the greenhouse gas emissions that are driving climate change. This includes strategies such as shifting to renewable energy, cutting back on fossil fuels, and implementing nature-based solutions that absorb carbon, like forests and wetlands. Whereas adaptation is about adjusting to the impacts of climate change that are already happening and preparing for what's to come. That includes adaptation includes actions that help protect people, communities, and ecosystems from harm, while also looking for opportunities to build long-term resilience. We are currently observing a political appetite for adaptation initiatives, while emission reductions commitments are falling behind. Both adaptation and mitigation are really important and urgent. Mitigation helps slow climate change, giving us more time to adapt. Adaptation helps us respond to the changes already underway and that are baked in. Resilience to climate change also includes communities being empowered to have a say in the future of their neighborhoods and climate. Now I'll pass it to Cassidy to speak on climate equity.
Yeah, so when we talk about climate change, it's really important that we also talk about and understand climate equity. And climate equity helps us understand that climate change affects us all, but not equally. Those who contribute the least are often the most impacted, while those most responsible are often protected from harm. So we see that the richest 1% account for more carbon emissions than the poorest 66%. And the richest 1% typically has more resources, money, connections to cope with the changes of climate change. So as Camille laid out for us, heat waves and extreme weather are getting worse, and the hardest hit are people already facing economic and social barriers. In cities like Ottawa, climate change worsens health problems, it disrupts livelihoods, and it damages housing and infrastructure. So an example of what this could look like in Ottawa could be maybe you're living in an older, poorly insulated home, making you vulnerable to extreme heat or cold, which poses health risks and can send energy bills soaring. Many residents have little control over temperature in their homes and sometimes are forced to choose between paying bills and heating or and cooling, which puts the health of many at risk. Too often, we see plans to cut emissions or prepare for climate change that don't consider equity. For example, landlords upgrading buildings for energy efficiency, then raising rents that tenants can no longer afford. We need to make sure that those most impacted are at the center of solutions and that the changes we push for work for communities. And that's where we see planning come in and planning play a role in climate equity. So with 80% of people in Canada living in cities and a third of national emissions coming from urban areas, urban planning has a huge role in climate solutions. But as we've noted, not everyone has an equal voice in shaping our cities and our neighborhoods. Those most affected are often left out of planning and decision making. Ottawa's official plan, which outlines policies and goals for growth, housing, infrastructure, and community development, which will shape our city to 2046, promises equitable, sustainable growth, but current public consultations often reflect the interests of affluent, long-time homeowners, leaving out the full diversity of our neighborhoods and cities. There's the lovely quote straight from Ottawa's official plan. New developments should be designed to make healthier, more environmentally sustainable living accessible for people of all ages, genders, and social statuses.
Great. So from here, let's zoom in a bit more. As Casti mentioned, a third of our emissions nationwide come from urban areas. Now, specifically in Ottawa, 46 of our emissions come from buildings, with another 42% coming from transportation. These numbers are from 2020, which was a COVID year, so there is some variation. If we look at pre-pandemic, we see some variation. In 2019, buildings accounted for 45% of emissions, and transportation was 44%. Currently, our city is undergoing significant growth. There's a commitment to build 151,000 housing units by 2031. As Ottawa undergoes major, rapid development, we have an opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while addressing affordability and accessibility of new builds, while also empowering equity-deserving communities to contribute to the development application process through public engagement opportunities and informal avenues. Now, there are many ways to reduce emissions in our cities through development and create climate resilient neighborhoods. At a community scale, we can create 15-minute neighborhoods. We can intensify, especially near transit, improve public transit itself, build active transportation infrastructure, and incorporate mixed-use development. We can also look at a different scale. So we can look at a specific build. At this scale, the design choices made can also have a positive impact on residents and emissions reductions. we know affordability and sustainability don't need to be pitted against each other the way the narrative often goes. For example, an airtight building with 8 inches of insulation instead of 4 inches, with renewable energy sources and a 30% window wall ratio, is going to have lower emissions and lower cost of utilities and be less exposed to extreme temperatures. So Ottawa's new official plan, which Cassidy raised, promises some of these things. So in the official plan, we see a commitment to development of 15-minute neighborhoods, mixed-use development, intensification and densification near transit, and transportation improvements. And I'll pass it to Julia next.
Thanks, Camille. So in order to effectively shape development in your community and hold decision makers accountable for their commitments, it's critical to understand how the development process works and key points in the process where you can get involved. To ensure development meets the city's wider goals, developers are required to submit a development application when they want to build something new or change the use of land in Ottawa. The purpose of this process is to ensure that proposed developments align with the policies set out in the Province of Ontario's Planning Act, the City of Ottawa's official plan, and Ottawa's zoning bylaw. Depending on the type of development application, there may be public meetings where you can give feedback and ask questions. And we can move to the next slide. Engaging in the development application process can feel a little bit intimidating or confusing. There's a lot of difficult language to navigate, and it's not always clear what developments are being proposed in your neighborhood or when you have an opportunity to get involved. A really good starting point is to use devapps.ottawa.ca. Here, the city lists all the proposed developments currently going through the application process. You can filter by your ward, which is your neighborhood, and you can submit written feedback directly online. As part of this process, we've developed some one-pagers to help guide your feedback so that it can have a real influence on a project. You can view these anytime on the Ecology Ottawa website under our climate equity section. Another great way to participate is by attending public consultation meetings. These meetings give you a chance to hear directly from your councillor, the developer, and any other stakeholders, and to share your own thoughts on the project. To stay informed about upcoming consultations, you can subscribe to your councillor's email updates, check engageottawa.ca, or follow these notices on DevApps. Not all councillors, it's important to note, advertise when public consultation meetings are held. And if this is something your councillor doesn't deliver on, you can definitely ask them to start. Another great way to get involved is to attend committee meetings, which are open to the public both in person and online. There are two main committees, the Planning and Housing Committee, which deals with urban projects. Meetings are held on the first and third Wednesdays of the month at 9:30 a.m. at City Hall. The Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee deals with rural projects, and these meet on the first Thursday of each month at 10 a.m. at Ben Franklin Place. But again, you can always attend online. Finally, your ward councillor is a great key resource. You can share both positive and negative feedback directly with them, whether as an individual or on behalf of a group of residents or organization. A big part of our project is that we've noticed a clear lack of communication with the public about how to get involved and when these meetings are held. And our aim is to expand opportunities for public input beyond what is legislated or conventional, which will inform the policy recommendations we submit to the city as part of our project. And I will pass it back to Camille to give you some more information on that.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, so our project comes out of everything we've discussed to this point. As previously mentioned, Cowie and Ecology Ottawa have partnered for this initiative to really bring both of our strengths into this project, which long form is called Empowering Community-Led Climate Action through Equitable Participatory Development Interventions in Ottawa. We have a significant opportunity during this time of very accelerated development to both reduce greenhouse gas emissions while also addressing affordability of new builds, while also empowering equity deserving communities to contribute to the development process. We know that we need to empower all communities to address to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it's about time we address the imbalance of participation in urban planning and development process. So the project focuses on three buckets of work. So empowerment and mobilization of community participation, research, application, and action, synthesis and development of tools, and a replicable framework. And so the specific activities that are included in this project include a pre-implementation stakeholder consultations, which we've just wrapped up, which kind of sets the stage for this project, informed by all the work that's been done to date by other stakeholders. This workshop, which is the real launch of the project, and upcoming, there'll be community care walks, participatory mapping exercises, community art exercises, all of which will happen within priority neighborhoods selected through a demographic analysis. We'll have workshops that dive a bit deeper than this workshop to really demystify the development application process and equip residents in priority neighborhoods to have their voice heard through public consultations and other avenues. We'll also be developing a toolkit available to all residents to take equitable climate action within their neighborhoods. And we'll be developing a framework that will be replicable for other municipalities to take on this work as well. And hopefully we'll really shift the dial on this. And then lastly, policy recommendations. So as we identify gaps, we'll be developing policy recommendations out of this work. And so central to this work is, as mentioned, participatory planning, which brings us to a facilitated activity for this next section of the workshop with Cassidy.
Yeah, so here we're going to do a little activity. This is a way to capture your own experiences of your neighborhood, and it's also an example of participatory planning. It's one way for communities to share their knowledge so city planning can reflect the people who actually live there. So I have written that I will invite you to take a blank piece of paper and something to write with. But depending on where you're at right now, you can do this all in your head. You can do this digitally on your computer. Engage in this activity in a way that works for you. The next step will be to sketch your neighborhood or a place that you spend a lot of time in. Don't worry about your artistic skills. This is just about ideas and experiences. So you might draw streets, buildings, parks, or any areas that stand out to you. It can be really simple, just some squares, some lines, stick figures are welcome. And then the next step to that will be to add notes or symbols for places that feel safe, supportive, or healthy, places that feel challenging or unsafe. So this might be places that have high traffic, that there's a lack of services, maybe there's no shelter over the bus stop. And then the last spot is some ideas for what would make it better. I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to do this activity. I'll do it alongside you. I do have a piece of paper. So yeah, so facilitators, you're all invited to do it alongside the group. We'll give it about 7 minutes, so it'll be nice and quiet and awkward on Zoom, which is great. And then after that, I'll invite you to share one thing from your sketch in the chat, and we may invite a few people to share their sketch on the screen if they would like. Yeah, I guess if you have questions about the activity, feel free to put them in the chat and I can answer them. But yeah, I'm going to start a timer and everyone feel free to do a little participatory planning. anyone's feeling nervous about their artistic abilities, this is mine so far. So again, don't worry about your artistic abilities. Got about 2 more minutes to finish up your drawings, and then we'll invite some reflections. Okay, so that wraps up our time. If you're not done, feel free to continue sketching as we start sharing ideas and comments. But yeah, if you feel comfortable, we'd love for you to share one highlight from your sketch. You can do that in the chat, but if there's anyone who would like to either share about your sketch or even show us your sketch on screen, we invite you to do that as well. I see Janet's hand up.
Yeah, so what I've noticed, particularly in the 40-degree heat, I live right in the center town and in the Golden Triangle, and I always walk up and down Gladstone, Cartier, Somerset, all of those main arteries. And I notice Somerset, the place that I feel most supported is on the corner of Cartier and Somerset on the north and south um, west side because they have green space, a little bit of green space, a place to kind of sit under a tree. But in the 40-degree heat, I notice there are no trees all the way down Somerset. There's at least a block, no trees. What happened to our trees? And that might be a question that's resonating with a lot of you and in the various spaces, but I know with the work that's been done in the downtown core, a lot of the trees just kind of go away or they don't survive or they haven't survived because of what's happening. So my anyways, I put along Somerset that there are no trees, and that's what is the unsafe part. Because with heat and with many, many seniors in the neighborhood, you can't even walk one block before you almost feel you're going to die. What would make it better? Yes, trees, and to recognize those spaces that actually do keep it safe for us.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Really appreciate you sharing, and thanks for being the first to do that. That was great. Okay, I see Earl's hand.
Um, can you hear me? Um, the chat is disabled. I just noticed. I don't know, that's just me, but I see chat is disabled. What I did was I live in just off Greenbank near Hunt Club. And let me see if I can do this. Oh, I gotta switch so I can see myself here, my view, so I can see what what you're seeing. Standard. So I don't know if you can see that or not. It's cancel here.
You're good, Earl. Thanks.
Okay. So what I've got here is the neighborhood. What I have is a neighborhood that around us, and the thing that has struck me from a an active living perspective that is contributing that could aid it is that we've got a parking situation with the school that has very little provision for parents dropping off children. So there's a whole assortment of legal parking, narrow. There's a lot of cycling through there. I've had car doors open. That means I'm going by. Everybody's in a big rush, and I know that from knowing some of the people that stop there, these people live 15, 20 minutes away. So there's a lot of people that could be using alternate methods to get to the school, and it's a safety factor too, and there's a lot of fossil fuels be consumed. So that is the place that has become unsafe, and then across there's a high density with children going to the green space and they're running across there. They're suddenly running across, and I saw them chasing a soccer ball the other day, and just my heart. And somebody parked across the crosswalk right at the school one morning, and I was creeping up. I try to come in a different way, but we're limited where we can come into this neighborhood. The good part of this is that I do have some trees in here, so those are the happy places, safe and supportive, and that's the Bruce Pit area, which is very nice when it's hot. You can get in there, and it's just a bottle of water, and the trees, the transpiration. It feels very comfortable in the heat, and close to those green spaces. So it's a good combination of this area, but it's the sore spot for me is that bottleneck that is dangerous and could really benefit from some active transportation.
Yeah, thanks, Earl. Thanks for putting so much thought into that activity and for being willing to share your drawing. Really appreciate that. I think for just given our time, we'll maybe do like two more if there's two more people that are open to sharing. I see Dana's hand up.
Hi, yeah, maybe I could just share my screen, or I'm not sure because I did it, yeah, digitally. So. Um, yeah. Okay, hopefully you can see that. I've never tried this before. Well,
It looks pretty good.
sweet. Thanks. So I kind of live in Chinatown, Centertown area. You probably are familiar with Dow's Lake. There is kind of a bit of, I guess, a barrier, but it's not a real traffic sound wall against the highway. And then a lot of cars naturally sort of flow through towards Bronson and Somerset. A couple of the places are where, there's more arts and culture, I guess you could say, along this stretch. So as like a young person, I guess it's a very lively neighborhood. But then some of the things that aren't so great is for me, you can see I have no AC, and also no bike parking. And I don't want to leave it out. I'm sort of afraid it would get stolen or something. So that's potentially dangerous. Yeah, and then I have the lightning bolt here just because I feel like when I'm walking, I can breathe a lot of pollution and there's really like, no greenery in sight. So I think that would make it a lot nicer. Yeah, and also as a cyclist, it's not the best. So yeah.
Thanks, Dana. That's awesome. Do we have one more brave participant that wants to share? All right, big round of applause for those who did it. If you didn't have a chance to share, please feel free to share some comments in the chat about that activity. One thing that I always really appreciate about participatory planning is that it lets us understand how the design of our neighborhoods and our cities impact our daily lives. So, as we heard in a lot of the examples, it's this really localized knowledge of of carrying out our daily activities within that neighborhood that you might not have access to if you're a planner and aren't in that neighborhood every day walking around it and learning about it. And we heard in the examples like really specific locations. And so it's like one of the reasons that I think participatory planning is so powerful and so important, is it because it really draws on that lived experiences and those daily realities of our lives. I'm gonna quickly pull our presentation back up. Yeah, so this activity was a simple example of participatory planning. It's a way for communities to share local knowledge and lived experience. And these insights help ensure city planning reflects the realities of the people most affected. So how can you get involved in our project? We have a number of community walks and mapping activities that will be taking place. The key neighborhoods where these will be taking place are Overbrook, Sandy Hill and Lowertown, Greenboro, Parkwood Hills / Maryvale, Centertown, and Vanier. To identify the neighborhoods for this project, we used neighborhood demographics, climate vulnerability, neighborhoods projected to receive high levels of development or that are currently undergoing a planning process, existing community connections and relationships, and community consultations. So yeah, that led to the selection of these neighborhoods. If you're a resident of one of these neighborhoods, you can expect some of the project initiatives to happen in your neighborhood. So, for example, upcoming, we are in the process of planning a community walk in Sandy Hill in Lowertown. That will be the week of September 29th. Unsure of the exact date at this point, but we'll get more information to you about that once we know. And then we are also planning a walk in Eastern Ottawa, likely Beacon Hill neighborhood, but that's still being identified with our community partner. And that will be on the evening of September 19th. So if you're interested, if you're from one of these neighborhoods and you're interested in learning more about the walks or the mapping activities, you can always reach out to myself at cassidy@cowie.ivtf.org. And if you don't see your neighborhood on the list, but you would like to see your neighborhood on the list, you can also reach out, and we can explore that as a possibility. And we'd be happy to partner or collaborate with you on possibly hosting one of these walks or mapping sessions in your neighborhood.
Great, thank you, Cassidy. I wonder if you would put your email address in the chat for folks who may wish to. Oh, there it was. Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, maybe add to the chat too. Okay, so we are gonna move on to Q&A. So I would invite you to either drop your questions in the chat or simply use the raise hand function if you're looking for that on your on the Zoom interface. If you go under the React button, click on that. It's got a heart on it, and then click raise hand. That'll put you in the queue. And once you are called on, we'll ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question. Et comme j'ai mentionné tantôt, on vous invite à poser vos questions en français et on va faire ce qu'on peut pour vous répondre, soit si on traduit ou si on répond dans la langue de Molière. I did see one general question pop up in the chat. This is from Janet. Across Ottawa, the community associations are deeply involved with the planning process, review of applications, meetings with councillors, staff, and developers, and making recommendations. Yes, this is true. Janet goes on, I'm curious, is the CCA associations being informed of this initiative and or being included in the process? I'm not sure, Janet, if your question is about the CCA. I assume by this you mean Centertown Community Safe Association or the larger body of community associations across the city. That larger body, the formal version anyway, is the Federation of Citizen Associations. I wonder, Camille, if you can speak to this. In general, the project we did consult with a diverse set of stakeholders. But yeah, Camille, can you speak to whether we contacted FCA or anybody like that?
Sure. We did not, but I expect we will. So we're at the beginning of the project for the kind of pre-implementation consultations. We didn't reach this group. We're still kind of identifying some of the lever points and for this project to really have the most effective influence. And so that may be with the community associations. But yeah, we haven't kind of solidified what partnership would look like there. Yeah, depending on the community association, the makeup of those can look different ways, but we have found that they trend to be missing some of the folks we're trying to reach, which is why kind of there wasn't an immediate partnership, but I imagine there will for sure be collaboration. I did also, kind of building on this, see a question about who we consulted. So that included counselors, city staff. We reached out to kind of community organizations, kind of climate justice organizations, Ottawa community housing, and developers as well. So we really cast a pretty wide net, and and also community members as well. So Cowie convened a group of community members. So we heard a lot of really great input through that process. Yeah, hope that answered the question.
I can just jump in here for a minute too, just to say that with our community walks, one of the things we highlighted in terms of how we chose them is existing partnerships and relationships. And so our Overbrook walk was actually planned in partnership with the Overbrook Community Association. That's one of the relationships that we drew on. And yeah, I think they're like a huge asset in terms of knowing and understanding their neighborhood. So I definitely really appreciate that question.
Thanks, Cassidy and Camille. And thank you, Basinja, for the question. I somehow missed that in the chat. So thanks very much for posing that. I see Joanne has a hand up. Go ahead, Joanne. Love to hear your question.
Hi, thank you. So this is a big question, and I don't know, I just need to ask it. So I didn't draw a map, but this is what I wrote. Condos seem to be going up in downtown Ottawa, Rideau Street, market area especially. They just keep building them. Do we really have that much demand for these, or is it just a matter of build it and they will come? I don't understand how we can have that much building and that many people living in these places. And at the same time, as I said, I live downtown in Sandy Hill. The number of homeless people I see on a daily basis increases almost weekly. So, like, I just cannot fit these two things together. Have we lost our moral compass? Like, do we care? If it was a dog, we would worry about it. It's a person. I don't know. It's just, there's something really fucked up about this. And I know you can't fix it, but what are we going to do about this? homeless people just keep losing homes, right? I mean, we can build all these condos and talk about all this stuff, but homeless people have nothing. That should be our priority, shouldn't it? Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, very hard to argue with anything that you said, Joanne. That's pretty good assessment. I'm not sure if anyone on the team wants to address any of the points that Joanne made. I mean, I will point out, Joanne,
I would like to add something. I never heard something about what the city is doing about what Joanne just indicated. I'm just surprised about that. Many other cities, they have projects to address that problem, but I never heard anything in Ottawa. So I understand that we are the capital and we want to have, beautiful condo, beautiful architecture, beautiful this and beautiful that, but that comes with a price. And you have people who work and they cannot pay a rent nowhere, and it's so expensive, and they build just for the very, very rich. And it's not everybody that can pay 4 or 5 $1,000 per month for a rent or something, and the size of those condo, they are so small. It, and it's expensive to buy them. So I'm just, I think Joanne put the finger on something very important. And, it's scary. And some of them have a mental issues and they are on the street and nobody seems to address that. And so I don't know, I never heard about it. Maybe there is something, but I'm just not aware of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Francine, and thanks again, Joanne. I think I would just make two points for starters. One is I would strongly encourage anyone who has the inclination to contact their elected officials about this at all levels of government, municipal, provincial, federal. This gets lets them know that you're thinking about these things, holds them accountable to what they're doing. Each level of government does play a role in this. And yeah, you can have some, I think, quite informative conversations. I do know that each level of government is working on these things at a rate that is commensurate with the problem. Absolutely not. So that's one aspect. Another aspect I thought I would mention is the city's attention to kind of housing typologies and what are needed. So the city does a growth management review. The official plan that came up a couple times is all about how the city grows, and as part of planning that, how the city does assess what kind of homes people are looking for, and kind of the infrastructure required for that, transportation, all those sorts of things. So it's not that they are completely ignorant, but we would argue that, and in fact, the market would suggest that there is a heck of a lot more room for intensification rather than suburban sprawl. It's very well known that suburban sprawl is very unsustainable, whether financially or economically, socially, arguably too. Anyway, all to say that there is data around some of those questions of typology that you were raising, Joanne. I won't go further into it at this point, but if you want to email us, I'm happy to kind of suggest a couple of sources for you there. Anyone else on the project team?
William,
Yeah, go
can I
ahead.
just jump in here a moment too? Sorry. I just wanted to speak to this a little bit too, because I think Joanne and Francine, what you shared really echoes a lot of what we at Cowie are hearing from our communities and our neighborhoods. Really that we're seeing all this development happen throughout the city, and people aren't necessarily upset about growth and new development, but that growth and that new development isn't really matching what communities are seeing and hearing and feeling within their daily lives. And it's not meeting the needs of everyday residents. And so that is one of the reasons that we are incorporating like participatory planning into our project and into the phases of our project, because that is one of those ways to incorporate that lived experience and help planners understand what is it that we actually need when we're designing and planning our neighborhoods, so that they're meeting the needs of the people that live there versus these sort of blanket and homogenous sort of developments that we see happening right now. So yeah, just wanted to kind of echo that what you're sharing is also what we're hearing, and is being definitely taken into consideration with the way that we plan this project.
Great. Thanks, Cassidy. Just going back to I did see a hand from Dana. Dana, did you want to pose a question, make a comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say to Joanne's point, yeah, it seems like downtown around Parliament, I saw two people like going side by side trying to pick up garbage, even though it was pristine, right? There's nothing. And maybe that was just me passing at the time, but then like in my neighborhood, we normally find like regularly find needles and things like that. It's definitely not as sightly. And so yeah, I just feel like another thing is near Kent Street, there's like a little lot where people for the first time started camping, like unhoused homeless people. And there was quite a few of them, but now they're gone. And so I just wonder if they got pushed away. And yeah, I hope that they aren't just being quietly moved.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. Any comments from the project team? Okay, I will just quickly go to the chat here. I'll point out that Julia added a link for contacting the mayor and city councilors. I'll also mention on that page, if you're unsure of who your city councilor is, there's a field at the very top, and you punch in your postal code, and that will tell you which councilor it is that is yours, and that you'll need to contact. Julia also put a link to the 2024 progress report on the 10-year housing and homelessness plan. I believe there is some consultation occurring on this. I can't recall if it's open to the public at large or just a group of stakeholders, but the webpage, the city's webpage on that is in the chat. So strongly encourage folks to check out that report. And yeah, Julia did include also some helpful stats related to housing and homelessness. I see a comment from Dana. Again, food security needs sustained attention too. Absolutely. One of our partners, Just Food in the East End, does quite a bit of work on food security. So if folks are interested in learning more, that would be a good place to start. A1 comments or asks that during the planning process, is there a minimum level or threshold of engagement that needs to be met before the City of Ottawa moves forward with projects? Or are there criteria for type of consultation that's required? Excellent question. Julia or Camille, want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. I just wrote it in the chat as well. Public consultation is only required for certain kinds of developments, including site plan control, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, demolition control, plan of subdivision, and plan of condominium. So your counselor can request public consultation for other types of development as well, but it's only required by law to do it for these specific instances.
And yeah, to answer the first part of your question, is there kind of a minimum level of engagement? Like if nobody comes to a public consultation, my understanding is no. They've done their due diligence by inviting engagement. just simply kind of hosting the meeting is checking that box for public consultation.
Yeah, and the requirements for consultation on development are mandated by the province. I believe it's the Planning Act, but I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on it. Also, that those requirements changed with Bill, I believe it's 23, possibly Bill 109. But both of those were bills that came up around the same time a couple of years ago and greatly affected how development occurs. And the changes at that point were actually a reduction of public consultation, kind of under the pretense of or pretext of speeding up development. Whether that's genuous or ingenuous, I guess I'll leave that to folks to judge. But anyway, that is a changing thing. I know we've got some resources on the development process on our website. I wonder if Julia or Camille could add a link to A Wong's question there. Kristen asks, could you please explain / remind me how the results of this project will feed into the bigger processes related to climate and equity in the city? I don't know who wants to take first crack at that. If no one else wants to, I'll give it a go. So some of this came up earlier. At least I'll start by speaking to the questions about climate. As Camille mentioned earlier, about 45–46% of our emissions of our greenhouse gas emissions as a city relate to buildings. That's almost half of our emissions. We're also supposed to get 151,000 new homes by, I think it's 2031. That is a huge opportunity, right? To that combination of a high number of homes coming in and a high proportion of emissions coming from buildings in general. That's a huge opportunity for emissions reduction. Maybe I'll stop there on climate. Open to Cassidy or anyone else. Cassidy to speak to equity in particular, or anyone else in the team, any other aspect.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of equity, I think we're really hoping to influence the planning process and have some recommendations or tools that can be used to help planners and the city understand how to better reach and ensure that they're centering the voices of communities that are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And so those recommendations will be sort of developed throughout the process of our research. So I can't tell you what those are, but that is sort of how we're hoping to incorporate our research into the outcomes of the project.
Amazing. Thank you. It's great.
Yeah, and just lastly, in case it wasn't clear, the selection of the neighborhoods and who we're working with is one of the ways that we're reaching equity deserving communities. So through, as Cassidy mentioned, the neighborhood selection included looking at the neighborhood equity index and looking at Cowie's existing relationships and kind of doing a cross analysis with the Ottawa neighborhood study as well. To select where we're doing this work, what neighborhoods we're prioritizing.
Thank you, Camille and Cassie. I see also that Cassie has left a question that is quite related, I think, to Cassidy's answer. Cassie writes, "This sounds like a great project, very exciting." Thank you. I'm looking forward to some of the synthesis, tools, and framework. Curious if there will be integration or recommendations about how to use / advocate for community benefits as part of this as well. Anyone want I assume, Cassie, you mean community benefits in the formal sense that the city has in mind with what is it, community benefits plans or something like that, not community benefits kind of in a generic sense. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay, thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, project team, but I don't think we actually explicitly discussed community benefits. Is that right? Okay.
No, I will name that like it is something that we have talked internally about at Cowie. I don't think we have like it is on our mind, Cassie, is what I'm saying. Yeah, so it's definitely something we could explore further. But yeah, it's something that we've thought about and we've looked at how it could be integrated, but I wouldn't have a firm answer for you, but it has been thought about.
Great. Yeah, it seems like just such a good opportunity to connect a lot of the dots on things and get funding for things. So hopefully, as you do the research, you'll find some connections there.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question, Cassie, and the answer, Cassidy. Anne asks, when are you planning on presenting the recommendations/resources? Will you be presenting to council posting online? Camille, want to take that one?
Yeah, so this project is funded for 1 year, launching in July. We'll be wrapping next June. And so we will be kind of setting up a meeting with city staff. Exactly where we move all of our resources and recommendations will kind of depend on what recommendations, like policy recommendations, come out of this. So I imagine we will be kind of seeking meetings, potentially presenting to council. But since we don't know the policy recommendations yet, they'll be informed by this work. We haven't identified exactly who the target of all our likely different recommendations will be. Yeah, is that the full? Yeah, as for resources and when we're releasing them, yeah, everything will be online. This workshop will be it's recorded and will be posted online. As we develop certain resources like the one-pagers, the how-to of development application consultations that Julia shared in the chat, those are already online. So we'll be kind of sharing as we go with the summary of our work coming out at the end, so June of next year.
Thanks. Camille. Cassidy, did I see you unmuting?
Yeah, I think correct me if I'm wrong, project team, but we also have at the end of our project sort of a community forum. And I imagine that the results of this project will be incorporated into the presentation at that forum. Like we've mentioned, like this project will develop as it goes, so there could be changes, but that would be an opportune time for us to share back as well.
Great. Thanks, Cassidy. Okay, it seems like questions are drying up a little bit. Maybe we'll take a couple more if folks have them. I see A1 comments that I've also always wondered how the city consults those whose voices aren't always at the table or heard properly. Not sure if anyone can answer, but is there work at city level to consult those who, for example, don't speak English or French, don't have easy access to internet, and so on? Excellent question. Thank you so much. Maybe Cassidy, do you want to take a first go at this?
Yeah, I can say that I think the city often relies on partnerships with community organizations to sort of fill that gap and sort of reach those communities. So that's a position that we at Cowie are often in because we have those connections and we've built those connections. Much of our members at Cowie are new immigrants or new Canadians. And so often different languages are needed. We have people within our network that can help us with that translation. But I would say that what I primarily see is that the city relies on community organizations for reaching those groups, and that many of the sort of standard processes that the city use often does rely on internet access, especially after COVID when a lot of stuff moved to Zoom. So I think it's a huge gap in the way that the city currently does consultations, and is definitely something that needs to be addressed. And we hope that we can push them in that direction.
Thanks very much, Cassie. Julia.
Yeah, I'll also add that in our pre-implementation consultations, when we met with quite a few counselors, one of them in Stittsville, Counselor Gower, has created the Stittsville Diversity Committee, where he invites newcomers to the consultations directly. So this is something that, if you want your counselor to do something similar to that as well, definitely a good opportunity to reach out, and something we could add in our policy recommendations as something that should be more widely practiced.
Thanks, Julia. Great catch on that one. That's right. I forgot about that body. Anything from Camille on that one? No obligation. Okay. Yeah, just one other item to point out on this. I know there are at least a couple kind of people/divisions in the city working on the engagement of folks whose voices aren't often heard. One in climate resiliency, and another, I think, in the communications division or service area. I can't quite recall where in the hierarchy they are. But the city is aware of these things. I think rightly, they've identified this as being an issue. Here, as with so many other things, we encourage folks to contact a counselor and say what actually is occurring on this. They are accountable to us after all. I just wanted to return to one question that Janet posed much earlier in the chat about the greenhouse gas emissions. Janet mentioned that observed that the numbers are from 2020. I actually thought they were from 2019, but in any case, at least 5 years old. And if we are in a climate emergency, as City Council itself has acknowledged we are, we need better data than this. So the city has been promising an emissions inventory for a couple years now, and that actually is supposed to come to City Council's Environment and Climate Change Committee on September 16th. So in a matter of a couple weeks. So please stay tuned on that. When we get the reports from them, we will try to share information on that, as well as how to get involved and affect the deliberations of that committee of council. Okay, any other remaining questions or comments that folks want to raise? Okay, we do have one very brief activity to suggest to folks. So we want to invite folks to leave a note in the chat about one new thing you learned over the course of this presentation, or may be curious to learn more about. So please go ahead and use the chat for that. Would we welcome people to also speak aloud what they learned or wish to learn? Feel free to use the raise hand function if you want to. Joanne comments, where there is life, there is hope. Yes. Anne learn about the different options for what participatory planning can look like. Love the mention of community mapping sessions to get community members involved. And I'm excited to keep an eye out for updates on this project and see how it impacts processes going forward. Thank you, Anne. Sarah comments that it was new to me to learn that 46% of Ottawa's emissions come from buildings. Thank you for the information. Malvika comments that this program is an example for me to see how equity is being considered in the development process. I would like to learn more about the development process. You and me both, Malvika. You and me both. Cassie, recognizing just how much of an important opportunity and responsibility comes with the growth of our city. Yes. Yes, very much. Wendy, I appreciate climate equity and justice. Thank you, Wendy. Aaron, participatory action is critical to empower community-led action and in development. I'd love to get involved. We would love you to get involved. Thank you. Wendy, appreciate the reinforcement of climate equity. Thank you. Fatima comments, thank you for organizing. One thing I learned is what equity looks like in climate-related projects. Looking forward to learning more and joining an advocacy team to fight for this important cause. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's reflections and participation here. So I think that's a bit of a wrap for now. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. Thank you for your engagement on this. Thank you for your interest in this topic. We hope that this has been beneficial. We do have a whole whack of resources on the webpage that has been shared a couple times. So please avail yourself of them, but please also stay tuned for further updates. You can do that by subscribing to our newsletter. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Ecology Ottawa on Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, LinkedIn. We may also still have an account on the Bad Place. So please follow us in one of the better places. Yeah, we'll have a lot more to share on this as the project goes. So again, we'd be very grateful if you stayed tuned and shared with us any other comments you might have. And with that, we wish everyone an excellent remainder of the evening. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.